Dr. Tamara Harville here to talk to you about 20 of the most common writing errors that were taken from the Easy Writer resource, which you will find on the works cited of this PowerPoint. I made a quote here: to err is human, to revise is writing, because when we are academic writing, we should revise our papers, and hopefully by understanding these 20 common errors, you can revise your papers. So the first one is a missing comma after an introductory element. An introductory element can be a phrase, a clause, even just an adverb, but something that comes before the main sentence. Examples: after cleaning her room, Suki decided to rearrange her furniture. Recently, I moved from Oregon. And in German, nouns are always capitalized. I was not aware of that last one. But notice the part that comes before the main sentence is set off with a comma. Next is a vague pronoun reference. When you're using pronouns, make sure it's very obvious what they're referring to. So this one could refer to one or more words. Transmitting radio signals by satellite is a way of overcoming the problem of scarce airwaves and limiting how they are used. Well, what is the they? How the signals are used or how the airwaves are being used? A reference that is implied but not stated. The company prohibited smoking, which many employees resented. Well, what did they resent? The company? The prohibition? The smoking? So make sure that it makes complete sense to your reader. Missing comma in a compound sentence. A compound sentence is when you have two sentences put together with one of the conjunctions. The conjunctions are but, or, yet, for, and, nor, so. And you must have a comma before the conjunction if there's a complete sentence on each side. So the words I do may seem simple, but they mean a life commitment. Comma before conjunction. A wrong word. In the English language, I don't know about others, there are several words that sound alike but mean something different. The computer's not going to catch these if they're spelled correctly. It's up to you to either Google the word to see what it means or right-click on it and see what synonyms are that are related to it to see if it makes sense. So here we have Paradise Lost contains many allusions to classical mythology, but is it allusions or illusions? Well, illusions means false ideas or appearances. Paradise Lost contains many false ideas. That doesn't make sense. Allusions means references. Paradise Lost contains many references to classical mythology. So that's the correct word here. A missing comma with a non-restrictive element. A non-restrictive element is basically a phrase after your subject that is not really necessary to make the sentence make sense. So Marina was first to speak makes sense. Who was president of the club is describing who she was. So you need commas on each side. Marina, who was president of the club, was first to speak. So that is a comma on each side of that non-restrictive element. Later in this PowerPoint, we'll talk about restrictive elements. A wrong or missing verb ending. United States dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima in August 6, 1945. On August 6th. So the word drop. Sometimes when we speak fast, we don't hear those verb endings, but in writing, make sure that you have those endings on your verbs. A wrong or a missing preposition. Prepositions are basically the things that a squirrel can do to a tree. They can go through it, under it, around it, in it, they can be on it. So we met in Union Street, San Francisco. That means you are in the street. Don't get hit by a car. Instead, we met on Union Street in San Francisco, because you can live in a city, you can be in a city, and you can be on a street, but not really in a street unless you want to get hit by a car. President Nixon compared the U.S. with a pitiful, helpless giant. That means he's got both of them side by side and he's comparing both of them. No. But instead, he compared us to a pitiful, helpless giant. A comma splice. One of the main three is when you have two sentences put together with only a comma and nothing else. So I was strongly attracted to him. He had special qualities. Two complete sentences that must be connected properly. You could add a conjunction. You could add a conjunctive adverb with a semicolon and a comma. You can put in the word because if you need, but something else has to be there besides just the comma. Missing or misplaced possessive apostrophes. When you're using possession, you have to have that apostrophe. So overambitious parents can be very, very harmful to a child's well-being. Well, a child's well-being, it is their well-being. You need that apostrophe before the S. Pedro Martinez is one of the Mets' most electrifying pitchers. He belongs to the Mets, so you need an apostrophe after the word Mets. Now, if you already have a word that ends with S, you don't need another apostrophe S. Just put the apostrophe. But if you don't have an S at the end, add the apostrophe S. Unnecessary shift in tense. Priya was watching the great blue heron take off. Then she slips and falls into the swamp. Well, was watching is past, but slips and falls is present, so you got to make sure that you're consistent throughout. An unnecessary shift in pronoun. When you're using pronouns, stick to those pronouns. When one first sees a painting by Georgia O'Keeffe, you are impressed by a sense of power and stillness. We always want to change pronouns to you because that's how we talk. But this is academic writing, so don't fall into that trap. Stick to the word one since that's the pronoun you already used. Sentence fragments. This is when you have an incomplete sentence. Marie Antoinette spent huge sums of money on herself and her favorites and helped bring on the French Revolution. Well, when you read it, it sounds fine. In a fragment, the second sentence, and helped bring on the French Revolution, is not a full sentence by itself. It needs to be connected to that previous sentence. The best way to find this error is to read your paper backwards, sentence by sentence. So if you know you write fragments, reading it backwards that way won't make you fill in the blank. So if I say Marie Antoinette spent huge sums of money on herself and her favorites and helped bring on the French Revolution, it sounds fine. I'm not going to catch that error. So read it backwards, sentence by sentence. The old aluminum boat sitting on its trailer. An ing verb can't be by itself. It must have a helping verb with it. The old aluminum boat was sitting on its trailer, or the old aluminum boat sitting on its trailer was rusty. Beginning with a subordinating word. We returned to the drugstore where we waited for our buddies. Just like that first one, it sounds fine. But where we waited for our buddies by itself, just because of the word where, is considered a fragment. Again, reading backwards, you'll find these. Wrong tense or verb form. By the time Ian arrived, Jill died. One happened before the other. So when you go further back in time, you add the word had. By the time Ian arrived, Jill had died. So that means she'd already passed away by the time he got there. Iris has went to the store. No, Iris went to the store, but she has gone to the store. So when you're moving in past and you're having those hases and hads, make sure you have the right verb with it. Lack of subject-verb agreement. Okay, so there's two main reasons that I want to become a lawyer. There is may sound fine, but the there is not your subject. It's the reasons. Reasons is? No, reasons are. So there are two main reasons that I want to become a lawyer. I usually tell my students avoid the there are statements, because if I say there are 12 students in this class, they're not doing anything, they're just there. But if I say 12 students in this class are listening intently, now they're actively doing something instead of just being there. Okay, Johnson was one of the athletes who were disqualified. Well, of the athletes is actually a prepositional phrase. If you take that out, you have Johnson was one who was disqualified. So when in doubt, if you see a prepositional phrase, read it without. A missing comma in a series. Sharks eat mostly squid, shrimp, crabs, and surfers. Well, this is that Oxford comma. When do you use it? If those last two items aren't supposed to be together as one thing, then separate them with that comma. So it's squid, comma, shrimp, comma, crabs, comma, and surfers. A lack of agreement between the pronoun and the antecedent. If you're using a pronoun, make sure that the word it is referring to, that antecedent, makes sense. Each of the puppies thrived in their new homes. Okay, puppies thrived in their new homes. But here's that prepositional phrase, of the puppies. Take it out. What do you have? Each thrived in their new home? No. Each thrived in its new home. Either Nirupa or Selena will be asked to give their speech to the graduates. Well, if it's either or, it's not their speech. They each have separate speeches. So it's either Nirupa or Selena will be asked to give her speech. The team frequently changed its positions to get varied experience. Well, team is a group of people, so it's their positions, not its positions. Unnecessary commas with a restrictive element. Now, earlier we had the non-restrictive element, but this one, a restrictive element, we need those words. So people who wanted to preserve wilderness areas opposed the plan to privatize national parks. That part, who wanted to preserve wilderness areas, is announcing the people, so it needs to be within that sentence. So you would not use commas in this one. A fused or a run-on sentence. This is when you have two sentences put together with nothing to hold them together. The current was swift, he could not swim to shore. Put in a period, separate them some other way. Clee's paintings seem simple, they are very sophisticated. You could just kind of combine these. Clee's paintings seem simple yet sophisticated, or Clee's paintings seem simple but they are very sophisticated. But two sentences can't just be together, you have to connect them correctly. She doubted the value of the medication. She decided to try it once. Although she doubted the value of the medication, she decided to try it once. Or she doubted the value of the medication, comma, so she decided to try it once. Sentences have to be connected correctly. And there is a PowerPoint called What the Beep is a Compound Sentence, I think, or What the Beep is a Clause. And that one talks more about connecting these types of sentences. Alrighty. Going on. Misplaced or dangling modifiers. I love this one. The hikers could see the eagles swooping and diving with binoculars. Well, how did the eagles get your binoculars? Because the eagles swooping and diving with binoculars, that swooping and diving is the eagles. Binoculars are with the hiker. So you have to make sure what you're talking about belongs with it. So with binoculars, the hikers could see the eagles swooping and diving. So now the hikers are the ones with the binoculars. Confusing, right? Looking down the sandy beach, people are tanning themselves. Who's looking down the sandy beach? This one's a dangling modifier because looking down the sandy beach has nobody to attach to. And then it's confusion. The car is lying on its side in the ditch. It's a white 2006 Passat. Okay. ITS, its, is like yours, hers, his. They don't have an apostrophe S. So if it's ownership, like yours and hers and his, HI apostrophe S, its does not get an apostrophe. Only if it's it is or it has does the its get the apostrophe. And this is the works cited I promised you. I hope all of this information was not too overwhelming and helps you with your writing and with your revising. Thank you.